Hello, my name is Samuel BK, and today I'll be teaching you about Gwendolyn Brooks, who is one of the most powerful and influential poets in all of modern American literature. I'm not just going to be covering basic facts about her. I'm going to show you who she was as a real person, how she represented her time, how she shaped American literature, and how she used poetry to tell the truth about life in black communities. I'll also be going deep into one of her most famous poems, "We Real Cool," and showing what makes it so important for understanding modern American identity, youth culture, and the social pressures of her time. Who she was. Gwendolyn Brooks was born in 1917. She moved to Chicago when she was just 6 weeks old. So she always considered Chicago her true home. She wasn't just a poet, she was a teacher, a mother, a community leader, and one of the first major black voices to receive national respect in American literature. When she won the Pulitzer Prize in 1950, she became the first black writer in American history to do so. Beyond awards, she spent her life mentoring young writers and pushing for more representations in literature. She believed deeply in telling the truth and giving a voice to people whose lives were usually ignored. Early life. Brooks grew up in the Bronzeville neighborhood on Chicago's South Side, which was one of the major cultural centers for black families during the Great Migration. Her parents noticed her talent early, early. Her mother literally told her she was going to be the Lady Paul Laurence Dunbar, who was one of the greatest black poets before her. By age 13, she was already publishing poems in the Chicago Defender, which was the most important black newspaper in the United States at that time. What's important is that she didn't grow up wealthy. She grew up around normal working class families, and those people who exactly those people are exactly who she wrote about later. She watched people struggle, succeed, raise families, lose things, fight for better lives. All of this shaped her as a writer. Brooks represents a shift in American literature where everyday life finally became recognized as worthy of serious art. She wrote with honesty and clarity, focusing on regular people like teens, mothers, elders, and workers. She also connected several major movements, including the Harlem Renaissance influence, the Chicago Literary Renaissance, the Civil Rights era, and the early Black Arts movement. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to show you who she was, the world she lived in, and how she wrote. And then I'll go deeply into one of her most famous poems, "We Real Cool." Through that poem, we can understand not only her writing style, but also what she believed about youth, identity, and the pressures inside black communities. Chicago's influence. Chicago wasn't just where Brooks lived. It was her entire creative world. If you read her poems, you will notice they feel like small movies of everyday life. People walking home from work, kids playing outside, mothers carrying groceries, older couples talking quietly in their apartments, young men trying to find themselves. She uses the rhythm of jazz and blues, the noise of city streets, and the emotions of daily survival. She never glamorized anything. She believed the ordinary person, someone who works, struggles, laughs, argues, raises kids, is worth writing about. That honesty is what makes her one of America's greatest poets. Brooks in modern American literature. Brooks didn't belong to just one movement. She lived through several major shifts in American literature. She grew up influenced by the Harlem Renaissance, which celebrated black pride, creativity, and music. Later, she became one of the central voices of the Chicago Renaissance, a movement that focused more on realism, community life, and social issues. Then during the civil rights movement and the black arts movement, her writing became sharper, more political, and more focused on black empowerment. What makes Brooks special is that her work reflects the entire timeline of modern black experience from early 1900s pride to mid-century struggle to later activism. Her writing style. Brooks' writing style is one of the most unique in American poetry. She uses rhythm in a way that feels like jazz, quick, sharp, emotional. Her lines are short but full of meaning. She uses simple words so anyone can understand her, but the deeper message hits hard. She brings character to life by describing small moments. She also writes the way real people talk. Her poems don't feel fake or forced. They feel like someone speaking honestly about their life. That's why her poetry is still taught today. It's real and direct, and it doesn't waste a single word. We real cool. We love school. We lurk late. We strike straight. We sing sin. We thin gin. We jazz June. We die soon. Poem focus. We real cool. We real cool is one of the Gwendolyn Brooks' most famous poems, and even though it's extremely short, it says more about youth culture than some authors say in a whole book. The poem follows a group of teenage boys who skip school and hang out at the pool hall. At first glance, it looks like they're trying to act tough or cool, but Brooks explained that what these boys feel isn't confident, it's actually fear. They act bold because they're unsure of themselves, unsure of their place in the world, and unsure of their future. The repeated word we shows how much they depend on the group identity. They don't want to be alone, so they behave like a unit, even if the choices are dangerous. The poem structure is important. The short lines reflect quick decisions, fast lifestyles, and the rapid pace of risky behavior. Brooks intentionally put the word we at the end of each line, creating a feeling of instability and uncertainty, like the boys are always hanging off the edge of something. And then the final line, we die soon, comes suddenly and heavily. It's not exaggeration, it's a commentary on how lack of support, a lack of guidance, and social pressure can push young people into danger. This poem is not just about individual choices, it's about society. It's about how society treats the youth, especially young black men in urban communities. Behind Meaning behind the rebellion. In this poem, the rebellion isn't just random. It comes from the environment the boys live in. Brooks understands that when young people don't feel supported academically, emotionally, or socially, they often turn to risky behavior as a way to feel in control. Kids skip school not always because they don't care about learning, but because school may not feel like a safe or welcoming place for them. Group pressure is also a major part of the poem. The boys stick together because identity feels less scary when you have other people with you. They want you to feel grown, powerful, respected, and deep even if deep down they feel vulnerable. Brooks shows that the rebellion is really a cry for identity, belonging, and meaning. The poem structure. The structure of the poem plays a huge role in its meaning. Brooks uses short lines to create a quick rhythm. You almost feel like the poem is over before it even begins. That's intentional. It mirrors how short and unpredictable life can be when you live dangerously. The placement of the word we at the end of each line makes the poem feel choppy and unstable, which reflects the emotional instability the boys are experiencing. The poem has a jazz-like rhythm which connects to black musical culture and also reinforces the lifestyle that the boys are living. The ending doesn't slow down or soften it up abruptly. It's soft or soften it up. It stops abruptly, which mirrors the idea of an early or unexpected end to life. What the poem shows about the youth. The poem is really short, but it's one of the most powerful things Brooks ever wrote. What she's doing here is more than describing kids skipping school. She's revealing the psychology behind why young people take risk. The boys in the poem are not just rebellious. Brooks saw them as vulnerable pressured, and insecure, even though they act confident on the outside. Their entire identity is wrapped up in we. They don't use the word I once. That tells us that they don't know who they individually are. They only act strong through group. Brooks understood that when people feel unseen or unsupported, they often turn to a group identity for protection. The quick broken rhythm of the poem matches the quick decisions the boys make. They're moving fast, thinking fast, and most importantly, not thinking ahead. What I want the audience to understand is that Brooks wasn't insulting to these boys. She was trying to highlight the real pressures that push young people toward dangerous behavior. Her message is not just about being cool. It's about her society. It's about how society fails to guide certain teens, causing them to live in the moment and not believe a future exists for them. That's why the end hits so hard, because it's the truth many ignored. Why the ending matters. The ending of the poem "We Die Soon" is the moment where Brooks completely flips the poem's energy. Everything before that line almost feels playful, like the boys are bragging, but the last line forces the reader to confront reality instantly. There's no rhythm, no rhyme, no fancy language. It's just a blunt truth. Brooks Brooks purposely makes the ending almost feel like a punch. She wanted it to interrupt whatever rhythm you thought the poem had. This line represents the part of the life these boys don't think about, the part they're avoiding, the consequences that feel distant to matter. To teens, she was saying the choices you think don't actually matter. And the adults she was saying, and to the adults she was saying, if you don't support young people, don't be surprised when they grow up lost. This ending is why the poem still matters today. It speaks to the same issues: lack of support, lack of guidance, environments that hurt rather than help. Brooks makes us look at the truth we try to ignore. Being cool is temporary, but consequences are permanent. Brooks' place in modern American literature. Brooks still matters because everything she wrote about poetry, identity, youth, pressure, racism, community still exists today. Her poems don't feel outdated because she wrote with honesty, not trends. Be Real Cool still hits hard because we still see young people caught in cycles of insecurity and lack of support. Her writing continues to be taught in schools and colleges nationwide. She left behind not just poetry, but a full emotional record of Black American life. How Brooks represents the time period. When we talk about Gwendolyn Brooks, it's really important to understand that she wasn't just a poet. She was basically a journalist of human behavior. She watched how people moved, how they talked, how they reacted to stress, joy, or fear. And instead of writing long essays, she took those observations and turned them into poetry that felt natural, like someone speaking from their own life. She never sugarcoated anything. She didn't try to romanticize the Black experience or make it look heroic just for applause. She wrote about the real stuff: poverty, stress, motherhood, danger, survival, laughter, hope, and she made it poetic without making it fake. Brooks understood that poetry should reflect truth, not fantasy. Her honesty also meant she wrote about topics people avoided: the teen violence, identity crisis, money struggles, and the pressure to appear strong. She wrote about things people whispered about but never said out loud. That's what made her literature modern. She didn't hide the ugly parts of life, and she didn't glamorize them either. She just showed them as they were. Brooks' role in modern American literature. In modern American literature, Brooks acts like a bridge between generations. On one side, you have older traditions poets who wrote in strict forms about European themes or privileged lifestyles. On the other side, you have new writers pushing forward with political messages, cultural pride, and modern identity. Brooks is right in the middle, borrowing the discipline of older poetry that but bringing in the voices of people who were never included before. Her biggest contribution is showing that everyday life, not just war, romance, or mythology, deserves to be studied and respected. She turned barbershops, classrooms, playgrounds, kitchens, and sidewalks into settings worthy of literature. Instead of writing about kings, she wrote about kids playing pool. Instead of castles, she wrote about apartment hallways. And that shift changed American literature forever, making space for more honesty and diverse stories. Brooks' and evolution of black voice. Gwendolyn Brooks didn't just write poems. She shaped how the black voice entered American literature. Chicago wasn't just where she lived. It became the core of her artistic identity. She didn't try to create poetry that only sounded pretty, or perfect. She wrote poems that carried the voices of people who normally didn't get space in literature. Her work balances the beauty of culture and community with the reality of racism, poverty, and struggle. She showed that a poem could still be powerful without fancy language. She proved that everyday she proved that everyday people kids she proved that everyday people kids at pool hall, mothers, elders in a quiet room deserve to have their lives represented in American writing. That changed the direction of what literature could be and who it could represent. The social conditions behind her writing. To understand to understand Brooks, you have to understand that the world she was writing in, she lived through segregation, housing discrimination, and unfair job opportunities that shaped black neighborhoods in Chicago. Many families struggled to find stability, and racism wasn't just a personal issue. It was built into laws, housing patterns, and social school systems. Young black teens growing up during the time faced constant pressure, whether from the streets, from limited jobs, or from the expectation of survival. Brooks' poems, especially We Real Cool, reflect how environmental pressure pushes young people into risky choices. She isn't blaming them. She's showing us what the world looked like from their perspective and why people act the way they do. Why Brooks focused on the youth. Brooke had a deep interest in young people. She saw youth as the heart of black community, full of potential but also full of fear. Teens often act tough or careless because they had to protect themselves emotionally. We Real Cool is not really about rebelling. It's about insecurity underneath the rebellion. Brooks understood that the pressures of poverty, lack of safe spaces, and the need to belong. She shows the emotional layers behind the behavior. Teenagers weren't bad. They were just responding to survival in their environment. Gwendolyn Brooks' long-term influence. Gwendolyn Brooks' influence did not end with her own publications. She became a mentor, teacher, and guide for countless young writers. Many poets and authors who came after her, including major literary figures like Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, and future Nobel Prize winners such as Toni Morrison, admitted her honesty and discipline. Brooks also played a direct role in sharing the direction of black arts movement, encouraging writers to take pride in their identity, speak boldly, and express their realities of black life without hesitation. Even today, modern poets reference Brooks as a foundational figure because she showed the world that poetry can be both beautiful and brutally real at the same time. The standard she set, truthful, precise, community-rooted writing still guides writers across genres. Literary significance in modern American literature. Gwendolyn Brooks' significance in modern American literature goes far beyond her awards. She serves she serves as a bridge between literary areas, connecting the artistic pride of Harlem Renaissance with the political intensity of Black arts movement. What makes her even more important is who she chose to write about. Instead of focusing on powerful or wealthy figures, Brooks centered her poetry on everyday black Americans, neighbors, teenagers, mothers, elders, and working class families. She transformed what mainstream audience considered literature, proving that the lives of ordinary people are meaningful, complex, and worthy of artistic attention. Her poems reflect the reality of the times she lived in: racism, poverty, survival, and personal identity. Because of this, her work still feels modern and deeply authentic. Brooks didn't just write poems; she redefined the lens through through which American literature views Black experience. To conclude, Gwendolyn Brooks was far more than a poet. She was a voice of honesty and protector of stories that would often ignore would, that the world will often ignore. She captured the humanity, struggle, hope, and dignity of everyday people in a way that changed the direction of American literature. Her her work bridges multiply literary movements, inspires generations of writers, and gives us deeper understanding of what life was like for Black Americans in the 20th century. Her poetry continues to teach us about resilience, identity, community, and the importance of telling the truth even when it's difficult. Brooks once said, "I'm interested in telling the truth," and, and through her writing, she did exactly that, leaving behind a legacy that remains powerful, relevant, and necessary today. Thank you for listening. Have a good evening.